So hey guys, I just wanted to show you a Cuban movie in which the Jews are portrayed as vampires in this movie, right? This was written by a Cuban Mason, and believe it or not, the Jews are actually the good people in this movie. But yeah, they portrayed Jews as vampires, and you're supposed to root for them, and they're the good guys. So this movie is called Vampires in Havana. You can look it up yourself. It is subtitled on YouTube. You can buy it there, Vampires in Havana full.mp4. So I'm just going to show you why I say that the Vampires in Havana, the movie, are actually Jews, right? Like, this is what the directors say. It's not what I say, right? So first off, let's start with the year, right? Like, the year is 1933, as you can see by this almanac on the back in one of the scenes. It is roughly, that is based on that year, right? And what happens? There is, so it's the 1930s, and we're following...
Mi amigo y yo necesitamos una...
So, and we're following a Jewish family that comes from Germany to Havana. Again, 1930s, escaping Germany, right? You know what happened in 1930s? Hitler was taking power in Germany. There was a lot of anti-Jewish sentiment, and a lot of Jews were already escaping Germany, like Albert Einstein, among others, right? That escaped during this time. So we see a scientist, just like Albert Einstein, right? A Jew that escaped... Germany, right? So we got Albert Einstein escaped right around the same time. So this movie is based around a Jew that escaped Germany, right, and came to Cuba and worked on an anti-sun formula from vampires, right? And here I'll give you the gist of it so you understand why I say that this
permitiera a los vampiros resistir el sol. Después de largos y pacientes experimentos con perros vampiros, en 1905 el científico pensó que ya tenía la solución. Los ojos de todos los vampiros estaban sobre el genial científico. Su padre, en persona, experimentó con la fórmula Un amanecer en Baviera. Ridiculizado y humillado, el joven Werner Amadeus tomó sus escritos a su sobrino Joseph Emanuel.
This is another proof that I have that these vampires in the movie Vampires in Havana are Jewish. The name, right? I gave you the time. They live in Germany in the 1930s, right? His nephew Joseph Emanuel, right? Two Jewish names that you can find in the first paragraph of the First Testament, right? Of the New Testament, right? Right there you see it, Joseph and Emmanuel, two Jewish names, right? One means God is with us, and the other one's Joseph, the father of Jesus, right? Like, it's right there. So it's Jewish names that you are not finding other tribes, or not finding, like, it's not Eric, it's not Adolf, it's not Alfred. It is Joseph Emmanuel, right? So it's another Jewish name that we got here. So as we can see, he brings Joseph Emmanuel to Cuba to become a brand new type of vampire that is... immune to the sun. But there you go. That's the second proof that I show you. What is the third proof? So let's talk about golems, right? In case you don't know, it's part of the Jewish Talmud and Jewish belief that Jews are believed to be able to build a golem. A golem is a mud person, a person made of mud, like a figurine of a person, that once you put the secret name of God on their forehead or inside, they're able to be animated but do not have a soul. So they're empty shells with no souls, but they listen to everything their master says, right? This is in the Talmud, and it said that some Jewish rabbi in Europe did it once to protect the Jewish settlement. He built the golem to protect them from people who hated them. So in this movie, his uncle, the Jew, right, vampire, has a golem that he sends to go find his nephew and bring him home. Here, I'll show you a clip. You see how he drags him away? See, that's the golem dragging him away, not even saying a word, it only grunts, right? And then you get the credits, and then I'll show you another scene so you see.
Esta es.
So there you go. So here's when he brings her. I want to show you another part of the clip.
Wolfgang, prepara la licuadora. Fredo. Bueno, chicos, que no los vea. Hola, Joseph. O como te dicen aquí, Pepito.
Hola, tío.
So you see, he's dragging him around, right? Like, look at how reminiscent this is of like the video on Supernatural. If you ever watched the series Supernatural, there's this episode where they have a golem, right? It's called season 8, episode 13. It's called Everybody Hates Hitler. And they has this golem that goes after the Nazis, right? This Jewish guy has a golem that he built and kills Nazis. Here, I'm showing you a clip. So you see the similarities between that golem and this Jewish golem from Supernatural.
Ignis aspectus atque occultationis. Sag deinen Meistern, das ist lange noch nicht vorbei!
You see, that's the Jewish golem. That's Bruno in Vampiros en La Habana. That's Bruno, right? Exactly the same. You see it, right? Here, I'll show you another clip where he drags, when he fights the boys, right? Like basically Dean and Sam Winchester. And you'll see the similarities again between Bruno and his ability to manhandle humans like he does in the Vampires in Havana.
Stop!
So there you go, how he listens to the Jew, right? This is the Jew that controls
Oh,
him.
my spleen.
I don't think, like, and you can watch the episode yourself.
Is that?
He's a golem.
It's a golem, you see?
Well, he's my golem.
See, he's a Jew, and this is Jewish golem, right? And he uses it to fight the Nazis, right? It gets pretty clear. And you see the similarities between that golem and the one in Vampire in Havana. Look at that. Like, he's dragging him, so much bigger, so much stronger.
Loco por verte.
You see what I mean?
Dijiste que vendrías
So, you see, you said you'd come early and I had to send Bruno. Here's another clip. So you understand, he's like, if you don't come back, I'll have to send Bruno.
Está bien. Lo prometo.
Mandaré a Bruno a buscarte.
You see? I'll send Bruno to get you, I swear. So there you go. That's Bruno right there. Here, I'll show you another clip so you understand what I'm talking about. So the golem comes in. I'll show you the golem here. You see? The golem here is deactivated, and he comes and he activates the golem. See, it looks exactly like Bruno in all those pictures, right? Here comes the Jewish guy to activate his Bruno, right? He's deactivated. See, even looks like with a big nose like the vampire there.
Well, now we know. Paper beats golem, fire beats undead Nazi zombie freaks.
So, what do you say, Aaron? Yeah, we got a place we can keep him.
No. I mean, Eckhart might be dead, but you heard him. It's my grandfather. Something only I can do.
See, the golem was left to him by his grandfather, so he's gonna write his Jewish name on that little Jewish place, and he's gonna put it inside his mouth, and he's gonna activate the golem, right? This is Jewish mysticism. This is in the Talmud, right? So you see the golem becomes activated, and now it starts listening to him, just like Bruno would, right? You see? I don't want to take too much of your time, but you see, that's exactly like Bruno.
No. Está bien. Lo prometo.
Mandaré a Bruno a buscarte.
See the similarities? Like, it just is right there, the similarities for those who want to see.
Looks like I'm the Judas.
Look, see what he's like. Let me see if I can find you a good shot. You look at that shot, right? Like, you see what I mean?
Something only I can do.
Let me find you a good shot. You see it there? It's super obvious that this is Bruno we're talking about. So there you go. They have the Jewish golem. They're leaving Germany in the 1930s. His name is Joseph Emanuel, right? What more proof do I have that these guys are Jewish, right? So, right. Also, let me show you a clip so you understand that they are indeed vampires. Here's when he reveals to his nephew that he's a vampire because his nephew didn't know because he was raised under the sun.
A no ser que usen balas de plata.
Ven acá. ¿Tú estás bien, tío? Vampiro, ni que ocho cuat.
Soy un vampiro, Joseph. Igual que tú. ¿No me crees?
Yo creo que debería descansar, tío.
There you go. So there you go. Now that you know that they're actually vampires in the movie, so you're on there. Let me show you another clip. So there's one part in the movie where the vampires are in the movie theater watching an old 1930s movies of a vampire, and they're all really happy and like rooting for the vampire as the vampire is winning, and then they're really mad when the vampire is losing, right? But this movie that they're using is another kind of like home homage, right? Like the author is paying homage to this clip, but that movie actually also says that Jews are vampires, right? I'll show it to you. This is the movie that we're seeing.
Wake up, Nicky. Wake up. And now I kiss you.
Ay, Pepe. Como tú y yo. Vaya, caramelo, éticamente bombón. Dime.
So you see, they're all having fun watching this vampire eat the woman, right? So they're all identified with this movie as part of the homage, right? But if we take a look, right, and I took my time to look this up, if we go and search that movie, right, and we find more clips of that movie that is playing at the movie theater in that show, we find that we're actually talking about another Jew. Look, because in that movie, the vampire Dracula has the Star of David right on his neck, right? Like, if you don't know, let me see if I can find you another, for those who don't know. If you look at Israel nowadays, right? We know that they say that their flag is the Star of David, which really, if you look and read the Bible, this is the Star of Moloch, the Star of Remphan. There's no such thing as the Star of David. But you see how that same symbol that is in modern day Israel is in the Dracula vampire from the 1930s, right? Right on his neck, right? There you go. There's no mistaking it. Here are all the pictures that I have of that movie guy with the Star of David right on his neck, right? Like, you can see it right there. You see, that's the Star of David without a shadow of a doubt, right? Here's another picture. You see the Star of David. You see his nose. You see like how they are alluding to Jews, right? There you go. That, I'm not saying this. This is the author saying these things, that Jews are vampires. I'm only noticing, right? So there you go. And if you go back to the show there, the one clip that they do show is that vampire that's wearing the Star of David gets really angry, or at least it seems to be vulnerable to the cross. And here you all see how the cross is used against vampires. Because the cross really it's multifaceted. It represents the Celtic god of the sun. So obviously vampires are beings of darkness and get vanquished by the sun and get destroyed by the sun. Obviously a representation of the sun god would do that. But also the crucifix is Jesus' watch, which is what most Christian nations have kicked out the Jews over things. And remember, Jesus says that these guys are the children of the devil and all that. And we go to church on Sunday, i.e. Jesus is thought of or worshipped as a representation of the sun. This is why it says he turns the water into wine, because only the sun turns the grapes into, the water from the vines take into wine via the grapes, right? It's the sunlight that does this miracle. But no, I don't want to get too deep into it. The whole point is that here you see how the cross is used against the vampire, which has a Star of David in his chest. So you see, and they get mad when they see the cross, the same vampires in the show, right? So this is another homage that the author is trying to pay, and another hint that he's throwing there, telling you that vampires are Jews, right? See how they hate the cross, and Jews hate the cross, right? So there you go. So that's another proof that you have there, is that homage to that movie where the vampire is wearing the Star of David on his neck, which is not the Star of David, but I just say that so you understand what I'm talking about. Okay. Wait a second. Another thing I wanted to show you is, before I get over, I just wanted to show you a part where the author of this movie, basically Juan Padron, who made this movie where he says the vampires are Jew, is basically saying word for word in this scene exactly what Adolf Hitler was claiming in all of his speeches, right? Remember that the whole propaganda of Joseph Goebbels and Adolf Hitler during World War II was that Jews were vampires that were sucking the blood of the people, right? Of the city, of the nation, right? They would suck the blood of the nation and would control everything. They had everything under control, right? And had their hands in everything, the banks, the politics, etc. So here in this movie, it's the same thing. Vampires have control of the entire world. They're controlling everything so much that this vampire is able to suck the blood directly from a patient at the hospital, letting you know that he controls everything and he's sucking the blood of the people, right? So you see, this scene is no different than most speech by Hitler when he claims that Jews are vampires that control everything and suck the blood out of the people. This is exactly what you see in this scene.
Tenemos que hacerlo, Smiley. Ir a clavarle una estaca, meterle un cuchillo o una bala de plata en la pechuga. Que chequeen los embarques provenientes de Düsseldorf, Alabama.
Seguro, pa.
So there you go. They basically have everything under control, so much so that they can get blood straight from the patients at the hospital, according to them. So that tells you how much they control society as a whole. Now, for the final and last thing I think I'm going to talk about, there's actually many more hints that prove that he's trying to say that the vampires are Jews. There's even the connection between vampires and parasites here. Even at the very beginning, you see the connection between vampires and what is it called, and the Masons, right? You see here vampires starting this whole thing with the Mason slogans behind them, Igualite and Fraternity, right? But I don't want to get into that right now. I'm just saying there's tons of hints, but this is the last one I'm going to talk about. So on the last one, right, when we look at vampires in Havana, there's a second movie, there's a follow-up to this movie, Vampires in Havana 2. When you look at the second one, right, there's a part where they do an old ritual on the kid, right? They're doing an old ritual on the kid where they're bloodletting it, taking all his blood and drinking it until they provoke thirst in the infant, right? And they call it the old ritual, right?
¡Suéltenlo, hijos de mala madre! ¡Vete!
Si muero primero, yo te prometo que escribiré la historia de nuestro amor. La escribiré con tinta sangre.
So there you go. Why is that like a Jewish reference? Why is the old ritual being bloodletting a kid a Jewish reference? And I'll explain it to you. I could never paint something like this. A really talented painter from the Renaissance time painted this. I could never paint something as good as this. And as you can see here, it depicts a bunch of Jews, right? As you can see by their yarmulkes and their long sideburns. This is clearly Jews bloodletting a kid. This is the crimes that they were accused of. I'm not saying they do this or not. I'm just saying that it was believed by many European nations that this indeed took place and that Jews were doing this type of rituals on little kids, right? They were doing bloodletting and whatnot to these kids. This is why they were expelled from over 100 nations, right? These are some of the accusations that were laid up against them. I'm not saying it's true or not. I'm just showing you the references. How in this show, in Cuban show, Vampires in Havana, they have an old ritual where they're bloodletting a little kid. And also, there is a Renaissance painting that depicts the same thing happening by Jews. So here, I've shown you enough proof now and enough little coincidences. I'm over 5 by now, where you are clearly seeing how the Juan Padron, the guy who made Vampires in Havana, is having references to vampires being Jews, right? It's not me, it's what I see, right? Like, again, make your own opinion, but there you go. I think the proof is very clear. It cannot be just dismissed out of hand. But the funniest thing about all of this, right? The funniest thing about all of this is, I remember there's a Cuban cartoon that depicts vampires and Jews, but they are the good guy, right? The vampires are the good guys and that you're supposed to be rooting for. That's what's crazy about this.